Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today with us, she's an author, and she has her debut novel out right now, and it's called DEENA, Undone. I have with us Deborah Every. Deborah, welcome to the Horror Realm.
How you doing? It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's good to see you too. I mean, it's been a while since I've done an interview, so I'm breaking back into the mold.
I'll be gentle with you.
Okay, I'm gonna be gentle as well. You promise?
I promise.
All right, I promise as well. So, Deborah, tell us a little bit about DEENA Undone.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you really quickly what the novel is about. It's my main character's name is DEENA Bartlett. She has tremendous guilt after not being there for her mother during her long illness and death. She gets a second chance caring for her dying, abusive Aunt Agatha, but strange things start happening. Her hearing, her sense of taste, they're all being attacked. She thinks it's her imagination until she discovers that her aunt has made a deal with an entity called the Sensu, and in exchange for health, she is going to sacrifice DEENA, and that's what the story is about. Now, it is based on a true story. I will say that.
On a true story.
It is true. It is true. I wrote the book at a time when I was in great need of catharsis because I was caring for my own aunt, my Aunt Mary. You can't make a horror story where the villain is named Mary. You have to change the name, right? So it was the last year of her life. It was very, very difficult. I'm Armenian. You can never say anything bad to a relative. It's just not done. So I kept everything inside, and it just got very, very dark towards the end. I had no choice but to start writing. So I started writing DEENA Undone. And the odd thing was that the Agatha character in my book sort of, you know how you hear authors say that a character takes over a book? They say that they had no control of the character. I had always thought that was bullshit. I don't believe that actually happens. But it happened to me. Agatha took over. She became something entirely different. And my aunt, if she were alive today, would be pretty pissed off at this book that is based essentially on our relationship. There are whole parts of our relationship and conversations word for word that have been taken from reality and put directly into my book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, do other family members know that this is about your experience with your aunt?
The plus is, this is a horrible thing. No, my parents are dead, and there really is only... Actually, her sister, my Aunt Sarah, only just died 2 years ago, so nobody has seen it. She has two very dear friends, Ellen and Arpy, who saw an article in Ginger Nuts of Horror about the origins of DEENA Undone, and I have to have a conversation with them to make sure they understand that I'm not really talking about my Aunt Mary, because they were very close to her and they loved her very much. So those are the only two people that I'm a little nervous about with the book when they get around to reading it.
Now, you talk about something, and this is, by the way, everyone, this is when Travis goes into death care talk. But, a lot of people, I mean, I'm pretty sure at some point in your life, everybody's going to have to take care of someone on the final portion of their life.
Yeah.
And most people don't know how exhausting that is. This is coming from someone who's done it multiple times. Most people don't know how exhausting it is. And not everybody is pleasant on their way out. Most people are just nasty and hateful and mean. And it's because they're dealing with the grips of their own immortality. You know, they know that the end is near, and they don't want it to be that way.
It's true. I think that anybody who has gone through it, I think most people feel a tremendous sense of guilt when they have negative feelings about the person they're caring for, because intellectually, you know that person is going through a terrible time. If they're sick, they're in pain. And they know they're about to die, they're frightened. Of course, they're going to lash out. the problem becomes, the issue becomes much more difficult if you have a shaky relationship with that person. But you want to be there for them. You want to care for them. My mother had the same thing happen when she was caring for her mother-in-law. It was difficult for her. She never would have shown her mother-in-law how frustrated she was and how angry she was. But I know that my mother felt guilty. And I understand that now. I feel tremendous guilt over the things that I felt about my Aunt Mary. I will say that after writing my book, over the period of time I wrote the book, my aunt and I reconciled a lot of the issues that we had, and we kind of came back to ourselves because we had a wonderful relationship when she was younger. She was kind of my mentor. And as she got older, for a variety of reasons, it got more difficult. The relationship got much more difficult. But towards the end of her life, the very last couple of months of her life, we found a way back to each other. So I feel good about that. Yeah.
So this was your first time writing a horror novel?
Full disclosure, this was my first time writing.
Writing, okay, writing.
Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, what was that experience like, man? Because you're dealing with this with this experience with your aunt, and you're writing a story that is personal. What was it like to? Because I mean, I always say, like, if I was a horror author, which I would love to be one, I would write stuff that I'm afraid of, dark experience in my own life that I've dealt with, because I feel like most people can relate to that. And that's something that you did as well. So what was that like in the process of writing this story?
Well, I should say first that I think most people who write will say they've written all their lives. And I think it's fair if I were to say I have written. I have gone to writing whenever I've had a hard time in my life, in much the same way a high school kid writes a diary and you get angry, and you're writing and you're angry and you're getting it all out. So I've had that kind of writing experience. But I kind of was seduced by a couple of other careers. I've had 3 other careers in my life. When I started taking care of my aunt, I was retired from everything. As I said, it was just so difficult. If I didn't start writing something down, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what would have happened. I certainly would have screamed at her, and I don't know what I would have done. It saved me, the writing of this book. But I had never intended it to be a novel. It became a novel. It was only a place that I was writing down my anger and my frustration. And as it went on, I realized that I had a book. I spent 9 months doing that. I had 30,000 words in, 40,000 words in. I took about a week or 2 off and I read it, and it was a great big pile of dog doo-doo. It was really not good. I mean, I do read a lot. I can tell when something is shitty. This book was not good. Nicht gut. And I put it aside. The problem was that I had gotten into this habit of writing. I was getting up every morning. I was writing all day long. I would take a picture. I would email myself what I had done that day. And then I'd lie in bed at night, and instead of reading a book, I would reread what I wrote, and I would take screenshots of anything that needed to be changed. That was great, because when I got up in the morning, I could just scroll through those pictures and start writing all over again. That was the way I was writing. You can't do that for 9 months and then just stop cold turkey. Yeah. So I started writing another novel. I finished that novel. It was a speculative thriller. I queried it to about 50 people. I got a request for 3 full manuscripts. I was in a writing group at that point. So that was the first time that I actually was with writers and got a chance to hear feedback and everything. I learned a lot. It was sort of my graduate course in how to write. I don't know, such as it is. I mean, I'm just learning when you get right down to it. So I've gotten to this point. I have a lot more to learn. That didn't work, and I decided, well, this sucks. So I thought maybe I'll just pull out Agatha again and see if I can make anything of it. I stripped it bare, down to just the structure, and I started over again. But this time I was in a writing group, a brilliant writing group. They all should be graduate professors. They're so spectacular.
Nice.
So yeah. So that was how I wrote it. That was why I wrote it, and that was how I wrote it. And I feel pretty darn lucky. I've gotten to know a lot of tremendous writers. I had no idea the writing community was such a spectacular, collaborative community. And the horror community is incredible. Oh my God. I'm a member of the Horror Writers Association, the New York chapter. They're the nicest people in the world. I feel so lucky to do that.
You would think horror creators would be like weirdos who arms in the basement, or
you know what?
Or just dark individuals.
We are pretty much weird. I mean, I can say that when I was at the Shade Bar in New York, we were all doing excerpts. We all looked a pretty dodgy, the whole group of us. But I just love them. I love them all.
But like you said, it's some of the nicest people. Like, you would think that most horror creators are. Okay, I agree. Yes, I'm gonna include myself. We are weirdos, but you would think we're some kind of mean, demented, demon or something. And no, it's some of the nicest people. And you're like, how the hell do you write these awful, disgusting things? Like, you seem like such a nice person.
I know. My favorite opening, I like opening lines. I have a file where I just have opening lines. So I have a bunch that I really love, but I have one that I actually ended up doing a short story, and it's going to be in Fairfield Scribes anthology the end of this year. And it is, she looked at her husband's toes and wondered what his reaction would be when she cut the little ones off. Now, you see, this speaks to me. This means this is a good thing. This is a good thing.
Now, Deborah, when you were writing this book, was there any point where you were like, oh my goodness, I can't put this in here? No. I can't put this in here. Or were you just like, no. I'm just going to go to balls to the wall?
No. I was going to write what I was going to write, and that was all there was to it. The ending has some pretty dicey things in it. It is a slow burn book, and I have a feeling that one of the things that I was concerned about when I was having a conversation with my publisher was they were very keen on marketing it as a horror novel. When I wrote it, I thought it was a supernatural thriller, and I wasn't sure. They said they really felt strongly that the last third of my book was horror, straight out horror, and it is, but there is a slow build up as a psychological horror novel would be, and I worry sometimes that people who like body horror and all that business, it's not going to be for them. So being a new author and having a debut novel, you just want everybody to love it. And there's going to be people who are hardcore horror lovers that are going to miss getting punched in the gut from chapter 1, because it's not going to happen in my book.
But one good thing about horror is horror has so many different subgenres. Exactly. So you do have the gore hounds, so you like the people. You have the people who like the slow burns, and some people who like a mixture of both. So like that's one thing about horror. I would say of any genre, it has so many subgenres. And I run into people, I say this all the time. I run into people who say, "Well, I hate horror." I'm like, well, I don't think you found the subgenre of horror that's for you.
I agree with you 1,000%. I've met a lot of. I talk about my book, obviously, and with friends, and a lot of them, their first reaction is, "I don't like horror." I think that I'm reading a book right now, Tiny Threads. It's centered around the fashion industry, and it's a young girl. She's having a problem. She's Cuban, and she's struggling with the industry and how they're treating brown people versus white people and everything. There's a lot of things in there that are not necessarily horror. So you have a book like that, and I think that people who don't like horror not necessarily would find a lot in a book like that. And I hope that they would find a lot in a book like mine, because it is a story about struggling with relationships in a family, secrets in a family that are left to fester, and what happens when secrets are left to fester, loyalty, and facing the truth when that truth hurts. Those are pretty big themes, which interests me a lot more than cutting somebody's arm off, although cutting somebody's arm off could be fun. You know, I don't have a problem with that. but I love when it's connected with the kinds of issues that we all struggle with. And I think that family is the kind of issue that we all struggle with. It all comes down to what happens in a family when you get right down to it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, and for good or bad, I mean, especially, yes, parents and family, it could kind of mold you. If you're going to be a fucked up person, any fucked up thing about you, it comes usually from, you got molded at a young age from growing up with your family.
I know. Thank God you got parents. You can put the finger on them, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. It's true. And then if you get old enough to have your own kids, then it goes, and then it kind of comes around. My mother did the mother's curse. May your children do to you what you've done to me. And it's the mother's curse. But everybody has that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love. It's interesting talking to people. My husband has one of those families where everybody gets along. Nobody.
Really?
Yes, this makes no sense to me. I don't understand this concept. My family, my parents were spectacular. They were wildly loyal. They loved their kids very, very much. But we were a loud Armenian family. There was a lot of yelling, and that's just what we did. I don't understand that concept of being polite to your family.
I don't, because, like, you know, I don't have, all right, so, like, with my dad's side of the family was super religious, and my mom was a witch. I mean, like a real black magic voodoo witch. Right?
Really? Literally?
Yeah, literally. And,
no more.
And I don't know how the fuck they met, but I don't know how that even happens. But but you know, his side of the family didn't like her. So I really didn't get to know my grandparents on that side, and you know, my aunts and my uncles, because my dad was married to someone who they didn't like, you know, and like it was a weird construct that, you know. I remember even like when I went to my grandparents' house, I could not bring any of my toys, and I did not know why that was until I became an adult, and it was because they were afraid that my mom put something on my toys, and I was going to be bringing some kind of spirit or something home.
Did your mother practicing her witchcraft? Were you ever there when she did it?
I was never no, but like when she passed away, I inherited her black book. So, and I do not have that in my house. That's in storage with a whole bunch of stuff because I don't want that crap in my house. But and I don't know because I just.
What is a black book? I don't know what that is. Is it a book?
It is the book with all of these, yes, bad spells, awful spells.
Wow. Did you go through it? Did you read it?
I did. Yes, but I did not. Listen, I'm not interested in conjuring up any kind of bad spirits, any spirits in general.
For no other reason than curiosity. For no other reason than curiosity. You've got to read the book, right?
I read the book, but then I was like thinking to myself, like, oh my goodness, if I'm reading this stuff, is this enough to do whatever is happening? You know what I mean? And then I stopped. I was like, no, let me not go any further, because I don't know if this is something you got to verbally do, or if you just reading that in your mind enough.
So, did you ever see the results of something that your mother did in her practice?
I have not seen the results of something that I suspect some things that she did, which were nasty, awful things. But I shouldn't even be telling this story, but I'm not going to go into detail of the story. But I spent quite a bit of time in East Africa, and I saw it firsthand experience done. I'll tell you off camera the story, but I saw the firsthand experience where, like, because people unsubscribe my channel if I tell this story, if I tell this story, but like, I went to he was called like a head buzzard, and he was like a voodoo priest, and he had the bones in his nose, everything like you were seeing in a movie, and like he charged you a low amount to do something, right? And I paid him the low amount, but what I asked him to do turned out completely awful and turned out completely scary, and completely terrifying, like you see in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to him to take it off. He charged me several $100s.
There you go.
And that's the scam. You know what I mean? They get you in with a low amount, but what you're seeking is something that you really don't want.
Yeah.
And they know that. Scary stuff.
Scary stuff. So you have that book out of your house and someplace safe, and it's
in storage with all of my horror collectibles and scary haunted stuff that I've collected in my world travels.
Do you think that's what has drawn you to horror then?
So what drew me to horror, my mom was always a horror fan. Like at 5 years old, like the first movie I remember seeing at a young age, and I got it on the wall back there. It's not my favorite horror movie, but this one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was the first horror movie I saw.
Out of town. How old were you when you saw that?
I was 5 years old. I was 5 years old. And I can tell you something right now. Movies that most children seen, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Wizard of Oz, Aladdin, Lion King, stuff like that, I've never even seen it. I've never ever seen any Indiana Jones movie. I've never seen any of the Star Wars. I've never seen any of the Wizard of Oz. I've never seen any of the Disney movies. But I've seen every single horror movie, because I've seen every horror movie and Jean-Claude Van Damme action movie. That's why I got him up on the wall too. But like at a young age, I didn't watch Disney movies. I didn't watch kid stuff. I mean, I watched cartoons and stuff, but like when we went to the video store, my parents were the ones who selected which movie we were going to get, and it was usually a horror movie or 80s bad action movie.
So it wasn't because you had older siblings that you were watching it with. You were watching it with your parents.
Yes, with my parents. It was family Saturday movie night. We were watching horror movies and bad 80s action movies, and that's why I love horror, and that's why I love action movies.
Were you scared when you were little, when you saw them?
No, not really. I mean, I tell you something. The first movie that scared the shit out of me was Candyman, and that was, what year did Candyman come out? But I feel like I was not older, but I felt like I was like maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And it really terrified me. And it was because of the little boy getting his penis cut off in the bathroom. And that terrified me to go to the bathroom.
That'll do it.
In the middle of the night. Yeah, it terrified me to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night for a while.
The scariest movie, the movie that stayed with me, I couldn't sleep. I'm a lot older than you, and I remember going to the Ellis Theater and paying 25 cents for a matinee, and I saw Pit and the Pendulum with Vincent Price. It was the scene where there's like this pendulum swinging back and forth, but it's got like an axe. I don't know if you've ever seen it, and he's strapped to the table, and it's getting closer and closer, right? But then there's this another scene where this woman gets walled up in a wall alive. That was so terrifying to me that I couldn't sleep in my bed with that. I had to sleep in the very middle of my bed because I was afraid somebody was going to grab me from underneath the bed, from either side of the bed. It gave me nightmares all summer long. It was the scariest movie I've ever seen. Then the scariest movie I ever saw much later that really gave me nightmares was The Shining. The Shining scared the shit out of me. And yes, I know that it wasn't the way Stephen King wanted it. I get it. But come on, Jack Nicholson, he scared everybody. And those twins were really scary to me. So A Little Red Room, and that just freaks the shit out of me. But yeah, those are really, really scary movies for me. Actually, there's a lot
Another movie that scared the shit out of me that most people don't know about, and it was on this fucking wall. I just recently put on the wall and it fell down, but it's right here. And it's one of my favorite horror movies, by the way. and it's called Henry: The Portrait of a Serial Killer, and
That movie.
it stars Michael Rucker. Michael Rucker is and it's so grimy and disgusting, and just it looks like something someone made on a VH. Like it looks so real. Like it was just disturbing, and it's one of the movies that really like messed me up as a kid, and like. But I watch it as an adult, and I appreciate it. I mean, it's such a beautifully disgusting movie, and it's definitely one of my favorites.
I'm just kind of amazed by that. It's amazing. You were forged in a furnace of pain. You grew up.
And that's probably why I became a damn mortician. I mean, see, listen, yes, mortician. So see, like it all goes full. It goes all full circle, right? It's some dark shit.
It is. What's your favorite mortician movie?
Oh, is there any mortician? I guess Phantasm. I guess I'll have to go with Phantasm. He was a mortician. You know.
There are some fun ones. I mean, there's Undertaking Betty. I think that's fun. That's with Christopher Walken. It's a comedy. It's a comedy mortician movie. It's not. There's nothing horror about it. It's great. See, you don't do comedies. You do action movies.
I do comedies. I do comedies. So listen, we're talking about movies now. I do like comedies, but I don't like newer comedies, and the reason why is. And I feel like this is the same way when it comes to newer horror movies. Comedies and horror are meant to be offensive. They're 100% to mean offensive. To offend anybody, I don't care race, sexuality, gender, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be offensive. And I just feel like horror and comedy filmmakers, not all of them, but a lot of them, are just playing it safe now. You know,
absolutely.
And it makes horror movies not scary, and it makes comedies not funny.
That bores the snot out of me. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of the Terrifier series, but I give Damien Leone respect because he is the one filmmaker that's out right now doing horror who doesn't give a fuck. He's like, fuck this. I don't care if I'm offending people. I don't care if yes, I'm going to go ahead and murder a black man to death with a clown, you know, and I don't care. This is what it is, you know. I'm going to go ahead and cut a woman in half. I don't care. Like, and I respect that because that's what horror is supposed to be. Horror is supposed to be and comedy is supposed to be unapologetic, and they are supposed to offend in a fun way.
So, don't you think I would think for a filmmaker it is extremely difficult because every generation, every movie, every generation takes it further and further and further, except for ours, of course, because everybody is afraid to offend anybody. But up until then, you're tasked with coming up with something even more, and it must be very difficult to do that and find a new way to do it without just doing it for the sake of being different or extreme or something. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
It must be. And I feel like it must be the same way. I mean, but I feel like the reason I said if I had to be a horror filmmaker or a horror author, I would be a horror author because I feel like you can be offensive in writing. I feel like people are not going to cancel you if you're or say, "Oh, you're a bad person" if you're offensive in your writing, because you know you got splatterpunk and body horror and all this crazy stuff that's going on, and the shit is offensive, but people love it. People appreciate it for what it is, and that's art. But I don't feel like it's the same way when it comes to cinema.
Oh, you're absolutely right. But it's in part because, I think it's because if there was a time when a lot more people read for entertainment, and I think it's less now. I think most people go towards visual things. And yes, there are a lot of people who read, but I think a lot of people's focus is on visual media. So it's in the spotlight, and you're going to get tagged if you offend somebody. That simple as that. Snow White, the Snow White movie they made, come on. It's just plain stupidity.
Yeah.
What am I? What? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so did you ever? So you don't? Are you going to try to write something? Are you going to do that?
No, I did it. I feel like this is my. I feel like this is my. What's where I'm looking for? This is my. This is me giving back to horror. I feel like I'm good at this. I feel like I'm good at shining. I'm good at marketing and sales and all that good stuff, mentally. And I feel like this is me giving back to horror and shining a spotlight and interviewing. And I feel like this is my part that I'm giving to the horror community. And I feel like I'm good at it. So that's why I'm gonna stick with. I'm not gonna be one of those jack of trades guys that's, oh, I'm a YouTube channel, then I'm a horror creator, and I'm an author. I'm gonna focus on one thing and perfect that.
I think you're right. I think you do this extremely well. I mean, I don't know about whether you could write, but I think you do it extremely well. It is laid back. It's fun. It's fun.
No, but do you think about offending people when you were writing? Did you think about, oh my goodness, somebody might read this and they might get triggered or something like that?
I just don't. I don't. But you know what? It's possible that it's because I don't naturally go to the extremes. One of the things that attracts me to writing is the visual. It's really, really important that it's visual and visceral. But the way I like to get there is playing with language specifically. I was a singer at one time. I sang opera for many years. That was another life. I love the sound of words. I love the way words feel in my mouth when I say them, if it's a good sentence. I've read everything in my book out loud over and over and over again, and I have to read it out loud for me to get comfortable with the way it's written. It's important to me that every sentence sounds right, feels right in my mouth. It's important that the paragraphs have an arc to it. It's important that a chapter has an arc to it from a musical point of view. When I was a singer, I sang opera and I also did recitals. The thing about recitals that is perfect if you want to be a writer is that you pick what songs you're going to do, and you end up getting a sense. After you've done a lot of them, you can feel if you're losing your audience. You usually lose your audience when every song is the same. You've got this great, loud, exciting song, and if you do another great, loud, exciting one and another one and another one, they're going to be bored out of their minds. So you learn really quickly pacing. And when the audience needs a kind of sorbet, where they need something quiet, because that sets up what happens next, right? It's so much like writing a book, I have found, and it's the thing that I love the most about writing a book, to get this sense of what you feel you need to have come next. I don't outline when I write. I wish I did. I think it would be interesting to give that a go. I'll write, and then I'll feel as if, what do I need to have happen next? And I think that's what most pantsers do, right? Mm-hmm. But it has to have that kind of a flow, that kind of moment when you can step back and take a breather. It's musical. So for that reason, I think this is a long way of me answering your question. For that reason, since I'm not focusing on shocking the reader, I'm focusing more on hopefully getting them to strap in for this ride that I'm going to take them on, that is propelled in part by the story and also by the words that they're reading. I think that maybe that's why there's nothing that I've wanted to write that I didn't write. I like to play around with sexuality. I like when something is, I like when, I like it when it's titillating, and that's really kind of an interesting thing to happen in the horror genre, when you are going back and forth between something sexual or sensual that it strips you enough so that you then become more susceptible to what horrible thing happens next. And I love that push-pull. I don't think I'm going too far in any of that, really. I really don't.
I agree with that. I agree with that. You were saying something, and I was like, you know what? That is true. When you mix sexuality and horror together, So you think about sexuality, you're in your most vulnerable stage.
Mm-hmm.
You really are.
Yeah.
So if something horrible was going to happen during that process, beginning, middle, or after,
Mm-hmm.
like it leaves you at a vulnerable state.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of things that do that. That's um, anything that affect that anything. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to play with in this novel. This idea of our five senses, and when you can key into one of those senses and then mess around with it, then it becomes really scary. Can you imagine eating something that is so vile, so horrible that you can't breathe anymore? You try and breathe and it's almost like it's fecal. It's like it's rancid, rotting, fecal, and it's starting to fill up your mouth and your throat and your brain, and you can't breathe and you can't swallow. I mean, if you can describe it well enough, you're just talking about a taste, right? But if you describe it well enough, it's got to key into what somebody is feeling. And the same thing with hearing and touch and all that kind of stuff. And then you throw in a little sex there, and then you're good to go. You're good to go. You're good to go.
Mess people's minds up. Yep.
I'm more interested in doing that than cutting somebody's Achilles heel with a bolt cutter.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind cutting somebody's Achilles heel with a bolt cutter. That would be fun. I'm all for that. But let's have some sex while we're doing it, okay?
I know. You really do. I mean, you have to, and that's something that's missing too in horror. Sex. Sex used to always be attached to horror, and that's gone now. It's completely gone.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
All right, Deborah, where can everyone find you and your book?
My book is available everywhere: Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, basically everything. I do have a website, DeborahKEvery.com. That's DEBRA, K like in Catherine, Every, EVERY.com. I have a Linktree account which has everything, and that's Deborah K. Every. I'm on Linktree. I'm on social media, and you can find all of those links on my Linktree page. My book is actually also going to be translated into Spanish with Dilatando Mentes. They're going to have a Spanish version of my book next year sometime, and you can get my book on Kindle and paperback and through Audible. You can get it on Audible as well.
Sweet. And by the way, everyone, the link to Deborah's Linktree is down in the description box, so definitely click on that and it'll send you to everywhere. Linktree, by the way, is awesome. That's a great.
I love Linktree. It is the best thing on the face of the earth.
It really is. I'm going to share something even better. Like when I go to these horror conventions and so forth, and like people are like, "Oh, what kind of channel?" I have this thing. It's called Dot, right? I had it like a business card, but now I got it's like a wristband.
I've seen it.
Is tap their fucking phone, and literally all of my social media pops up. They automatically subscribe to all of my stuff.
Do they love it?
Amazing, huh?
I've been thinking about getting it. Do they love it? Are people cool about?
Yeah, it's so cool to just tap their phone on, boop, and all of my, and it's great for me as as somebody who's a creator, right? Because they automatically subscribe to your YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, everything you have in there. They automatically subscribe to it, and it is absolutely amazing. If you're an author, creator, this and that, please get a Dot card. They are not a sponsor, but I wish they were a sponsor.
I love it. I saw them. I was thinking about getting one. Very cool.
They're absolutely amazing. You can get the little business card one, or you can get the wristband.
And you have you have the wristband. You like the wristband? I
have the wristband, and they also I got the barcode. I shouldn't be saying this, but I had the barcode from the what's it called? Put onto my Horror Realm sweatshirts and t-shirts. So when I'm at conventions or events or anything, only thing people have to do is scan the back of my shirt. Boop! They can find me.
brilliant. That's a brilliant thing to do.
Yes, I'm giving a life hack to anybody who is a horror creator and you need subscribers on YouTube. Go to horror conventions and have yourself a dot or your what's it called on the back of your shirt, and you will get subscribers like that.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you, Deborah. And listen, everyone, thank you for coming to the horror room. By the way, I don't say this that often, and again, maybe I should. Go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. It definitely helps us out. I hate saying subscribe because it sounds like I'm begging for subscribers. But I will say it every once in a while. Please subscribe, because this is an amazing channel. We do a lot here for indie horror creators for free, and who don't have the funds to go ahead and do marketing spotlight. So definitely support us and support the indie horror creators. All right, everyone, thank you for coming to the horror room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that is Deborah Every.
Hey.
We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.